Welcome. You are listening to the Be a Better Being podcast, hosted by Michelle Zellner and Sasha Berscheid. Michelle and Sasha are here to give you information and inspiration to help you live your healthiest, happiest lives. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings. Thank you for tuning in to the Be a Better Being podcast. I'm Michelle Zellner, your host. I have no side host today, but I have a super cool guest that I'm really excited to dive into this conversation with. Adam Cohen, welcome to the Be a Better Being podcast.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm pretty excited about this topic. Number one, because it is, it's not officially summer, but it's June. June is sort of summer for a lot of us. So I know a lot of us have been coming through a very difficult winter and spring, and we're very happy that June is finally here. The first week of June is National Gardening Week. And, being closer to your food source, getting closer to nature, all of these things, I think, are things that are helpful to help somebody be a better human being. So I thought it'd be super fun to have you come on and talk about it because this is exactly what you do. So let's just start about maybe giving a little background on you, where are you from, how you came into doing what you're doing, and then we'll get into some of the nitty gritty so that anybody who's thinking about being an urban farmer or a farmer of any type can get some really great
Mhm.
tips from you.
Sounds great. So, quick background about me. Let's see. About 10 years ago, I started with aquaponics. And for anybody who's not familiar, aquaponics is a type of hydroponics where you are growing without soil, but instead of mixing up just a strict nutrient solution, you actually keep fish or some other type of aquatic animal in the tanks with the plants, and their waste actually gets broken down and becomes fertilizer. So when I did that, I actually was doing it with a group of students that I had. They were bored in my classroom, and I said, "Okay, go figure out how to do this, and let's figure out how to make this work." And the short version is I just kind of fell down the rabbit hole. Within a year, I was teaching workshops in the Dallas-Fort Worth, the North Texas area. I was designing systems. 3 years later, I had a private company that was designing systems, teaching workshops, and building commercial scale systems across Texas at that point. And from there, it grew into a small production aquaponic farm in the North Texas area where we did aquaponics. Later, I brought in some hydroponics. I stepped away from the farm for a few years to go teach hydroponics in New Mexico at a community college, came back to Texas, and through a unrelated series of random events, I ended up being a urban mushroom farmer. We had now ex-partner. We took over a 2,000 square foot warehouse. We started growing 12 different types of gourmet mushrooms, oyster mushrooms, lion's mane, shiitake, maitake, things like that. And in 3 years, we grew that farm from producing about 30 pounds a week to growing about 800 pounds a week. This past summer, so last year in 2022? I can't even remember what year it is now. That's bad. But last year, I actually left that farm and decided to go back to teaching high school. And I'm currently in development of my next two or three ideas for how I'm going to do my next farm. But I've always been kind of in love with the idea of growing and the idea of being connected to where my food comes from. So over the last 5, 6 years, I've really enjoyed meeting other local farms, talking about how they grow, and helping people to realize that they don't need to be a farmer. They don't need to have a production farm to have a garden or to grow some basil in your kitchen, to find that connection to their food. And so aside from growing and being a farmer, one of my favorite things to do is just talk to people about food, where it comes from, and how they can uh, find joy in just little things around us. So I'm excited to be here and talk to you and just share some of that. So hope that was enough about me.
I love it. So many things I want to kind of touch on. I bet a lot of
Please.
people don't know what hydroponics are. So interestingly enough, my mom, the late 70s, early 80s, had a plant business called the Green Thumb. Think Tupperware parties, but for plants. So she did plant parties and she
Mm.
got super into hydroponics. And that was fairly new at that time. So I got very familiar with hydroponics. I was often her little side helper, helping her do the things at the parties or at the big events. We did a lot of that together. And then I grew up in rural Wisconsin and we had a very big garden. Last year, we had my girlfriend that I grew up with on the show, Michelle Johnson. She runs a daycare and she teaches the kids about growing the food, and they all have a garden and they eat their food that they grow. So we had a really fun conversation about that. But out of that, I grew to very much dislike gardening. Because for me, it was just work. It was this big garden. You have to plant it, you have to mulch it, you have to weed it, you have to pick the stuff, you have to clean the stuff, prep the stuff, and then you're supposed to eat the stuff. And I was like, so when I became an adult, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to buy my food because that's super simple. And yet, I do have a deep appreciation for locally sourced, locally grown food. Food as close to its natural state as possible because obviously we know that the big growers, the big production may not be the best for us to put in our bodies. So I love that you went small, you got big, you're kind of coming back to small because I think it is such a great awareness when you've seen it from all sides, right? I'm
It
curious.
is
So I think you
absolutely.
were you were teaching high school and now you're back to teaching high school. So tell me a little bit about the dynamic of, high schoolers and learning how to grow in this way and specifically what were you growing it with the aquaponics?
Okay, so to start with teaching and how that's kind of affected my journey. So currently I'm in my 17th year of teaching, and I've taught middle school to high school, community college. I taught workshops. I ran a summer camp for a number of years. The more I think about it, the more I realize I've always been teaching. The subject may have changed, the delivery method may have changed, but I've always been a teacher. And really, at the core of it, even when I've been a production farmer, be it lettuce or other crops or mushrooms, one of my responsibilities, one of my primary roles was always still education. So it was if I was meeting with a new chef or at a farmer's market, I was teaching people how to use the crops that I was selling. Because one thing that I've seen just universally, whether it's my 15-year-old high school sophomores or it's the 30, 40, 50 year olds that I see at farmers market, oftentimes they're like, oh, that looks really cool. I have zero idea what to do with it. Or it's the response of, okay, well, kale. I've heard of kale, but what do I do with it? How do I cook it? How do I use it? And so a lot of it still comes back to education. And one of my business philosophies has always been relationships. I am there to develop a relationship and to give more than what the customer gives back to me in cash or whatever. So we provided recipes. We did cooking workshops with some of our chefs. And it, when I work with high schoolers in my classroom right now, it's here's the things that you can gain from this and that are going to benefit you. But here's just the joy of learning how to do something for yourself. And it works real well. It's had a good track record for me. May not work for everybody, but that trying to hook them through interest and shared joy, it seems to have given me more dividends than problems over the years. But I love seeing people learn how to take new information and integrate it in their lives. So how to grow basil on your kitchen counter and put it on a pizza or whatever. As far as what I've grown, I went through a phase with aquaponics of I grew everything I could just to kind of prove that it could be done. So I've grown root crops, I've grown onions and radishes and beets in my aquaponic systems. I grew a pineapple in my greenhouse in Texas just to prove that I could. Commercially, we did greens and lettuces. So a lot of pak choi, a lot of herbs, a lot of lettuces, a lot of things that are the leafy green types. And mostly from the commercial standpoint, that was because they would grow 12 months out of the year. We could have steady production. And For a commercial farm, that's really what you need. You need that steady week in, week out production because that's what your customers want. For a home garden, for a classroom where you're trying to show the practice without the slog, like just boring work, grow whatever you want. Grow, have some fun, grow cherry tomatoes because it's easy to see when they're ripe and you can just pluck them off and put them on a salad. Your story about doing all the work in the garden and then not having any energy left to actually use what you grew, that's pretty common. A lot of people are like that. And so aquaponics is easy because you don't have the weeding, you don't have the mulching, you don't have that bending over, backbreaking work once the system gets up and running. So it's accessible to a lot of people. And in the urban environment, when you don't have a whole lot of soil, you don't have a big backyard, or you live in an apartment and you have a tiny little balcony, it allows you to grow a greater quantity of things in the same time or faster because of the way the system works. So it's more accessible for people in the urban environment, I think.
Well, I love that accessibility because that is a really big deal. I live in downtown Denver and yeah, I don't have soil out my patio. And I dabbled a little bit with, doing some planter growings and things like that, but the sun is just too hot or you got to keep on top of the watering. It's always takes so much more effort than you think it's going to. And, if the conditions aren't ideal because I have a big building that blocks the sun most of the day, but then it gets super intense sun for 4 hours of the day, it could really kind of turn you off altogether from it. Because am I going to invest time and money in doing this and then the plant dies anyway? Well, why am I going to continue to bother doing that?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little more about the aquaponics because I am super fascinated. Is this something that somebody can like buy a kit and just get started? Or if somebody's curious and interested, what's the route you would suggest?
I think in my experience, most people break down into two categories. The people who see the kits ready on the shelves and they go, I'm not going to waste my money because I can build that myself. And so there are resources galore on YouTube and on 100 different websites of, hey, take this plan. You need a 10-gallon fish tank and this and this and this, and you can go build your own system. And for those people, that's amazing and it totally works and they're going to love it. And yes, it's super simple. It really is. Then there's other people that are like, I could do it, but why? I'll gladly buy what somebody else has provided. And for that, there are a lot of options out there. A lot of the really small, like countertop or tabletop systems, are more gimmicky. They work and they're decent quality and all of that, but you're going to grow 4 basil plants. They're not big enough to be able to grow anything that's actually going to reduce your grocery bill. But if you want it just to be able to have a house plant that can also serve a purpose, they're totally fun. And for classrooms, or if you have young kids and you want to, once again, connect, show that connection from where food comes from to your plate. And then they're totally worthwhile for that. And there's easily 8 or 10 systems that are out there that are commonly accessible. If you want to actually grow a quantity of food that you can use to reduce your weekly, monthly food bills, you're going to need probably a space that's 4 to 5 foot wide by 8 to 10 feet long, a decent sized patio or porch. And yeah, you can grow quite a bit of food if you grow the right things. And the great thing about aquaponics, okay, so commercially, I will probably never do aquaponics again just because there are too many places where, from a commercial standpoint, it's not optimized. With aquaponics, you have a living component with fish, with the plants, and with the bacteria that convert the waste. And so, if any one of those are out of balance, the whole system reduces its efficiency. It won't crash and die, but it's not going to grow fast. And from a commercial standpoint, you need that repeatability. So, hydroponics gives you that consistency, and that's where I'll go if I do it commercially again. But from a standpoint of something that you want that is going to work at least at some level without that chance of really failing or just crashing and dying, aquaponics is very resilient. And for a home backyard homesteader scale system, it's great. Most people use some type of fish that they can harvest and eat. In Texas, I always used goldfish and koi because I would get that calming enjoyment of watching my fish. And, I always had small, except at the commercial farm, the personal systems I had never were really big enough to get enough fish to eat. So I just did ornamental fish and let them grow up, and I'd sit there and stare at my fish tank for hours on hours. It's great to have a fish pond on your porch.
I love that. From a nutritional standpoint of the food, how is the nutritional content different than if it's grown in soil?
Okay, so that's a loaded question. There is produce that you can buy conventionally that's grown in soil that is absolutely super nutrient dense, super healthy, and super amazing. And then there's also soil grown produce that is utterly horrible and nutrient poor. And the same argument can be said for some crops grown in hydroponics versus others, aquaponics versus others. It's, I would say it's less about the method specifically and more about the details of how it's grown. If you grow from, if you eat produce from a regenerative soil based farm that practices organic methods and does everything along those lines, that's going to be amazingly healthy too. If you get produce from a farm that practices conventional plowing and tilling and excess fertilizer and herbicides and all of this, it's going to be questionable. It could be good, it could be bad. Hydroponics, aquaponics, the produce, or I mean, with aquaponics, if the fish are healthy, if the bacteria are healthy, then the plants are going to be healthy. So you have that built in uh, alarm system. If the fish aren't healthy, then the plants aren't going to be healthy and you're not going to get a good harvest. But if everything's working in concert with each other, it's going to be great. I've grown tomatoes in hydroponics that had better nutritional data than stuff grown on an organic farm, you know, down the county road from where I was. They were sweeter, they were more nutrient dense. It can be done. It just, unfortunately, it just doesn't mean that everybody's doing it. So it's the best thing I could say for that is know your farmer. Try to not buy produce from the grocery store. Try to go to a farmer's market. Try to join a CSA. Meet the farmer that is growing your produce. Talk to them. One, they want to talk to you. They want to know who you are. They want to know the people that are enjoying the fruits of their labors, literally. But the other thing is that as a consumer, if you know your farmer, if you trust your farmer, you're going to ask questions. You're going to say, well, what herbicides did you use? What fertilizers did you use? Hey, could I come out someday with my family and come see the farm? You need help someday. It's connection, it's relationships. And so if you're concerned about the nutrition of your food, go get connected with your food system. Go meet your farmers. Absolutely.
Yeah, we are very spoiled here in Colorado with an abundance of local growers and farmers markets. And I know that's not the case everywhere, but my guess is there is something almost everywhere. You might need to look a little harder for it in some places. And then, the co-ops and the different
Mhm.
opportunities to connect a little more locally in that way as well. Buying seasonally when you can. The quality of the food obviously depends on the quality of what the food is being fed. Pretty simple, right?
Yep, absolutely.
If it so I mean, I go to the farmers markets here. I don't think I have, and maybe they're just not saying it, but I don't think I've seen food that's being offered that is grown by aquaponics. Is that something that people would tell you, or you would
Mhm.
have to ask? Like, is that like a selling point, or what is
Um,
it in the farming world today?
it It depends a lot on the farmer's market. It depends on the customer base. Here in Texas, we always used it as a selling point. It was always something that differentiated us from the other guys selling lettuce or herbs or such. Well, we were DFW Aquaponic Farms. I mean, it was in our name. one, so we couldn't really hide it if we wanted to. But we sold our, so to give an example, we sold our lettuce with the roots on. So we sold a living lettuce, and we we would have customers come and they'd buy 3 heads from us in a week, and then the next week they'd come by and they'd come say hi, but they're like, "Hey, I can't buy anything this week because the lettuce I bought from you last week, we ended up going out of town, and I still have 2 heads in the fridge, and they look brand new. They look perfect." And so we'd hear that all the time. And at the time, the stand 3 down from us was selling lettuce, and it was even the same variety, same seed, but he was selling it for $2 a head, and we were selling it for $4 a head. And we would sell out before he would because our quality was better. It lasted longer. It wouldn't go bad. And so the the selling point is part of just that whole package. It's the quality of your product. In Denver, you're in Denver, right?
Yeah.
I would bet that there's at least 4 or 5 because I know personally of 3 aquaponic farms in Denver. They just, as you said, you have a lot of farmers markets, so they might just not be at the ones that you go to. But I know there's at least 3 aquaponic farms in the area that sell locally. But yeah, most aquaponic farms will be very upfront and very vocal about what they do. Hydroponic farms, it's a 50-50. Hydroponics has gotten a bad rap in probably the last 20 years, last 15 years. The cannabis industry has made some people less willing to say that they grow hydroponically. Plus, there's the whole the sci-fi like lab image from movies and such of the sterile white room and the guys in gas masks and white coats. And there are hydroponic farms like that, but mostly they just look like regular farms. So it just depends on the customer base. So in my experience at least.
Well, I'm definitely going to do a little research and find out because it is fascinating. I think from a sustainability standpoint, and just like you said, for people who live in urban areas where soil is just not there, or you're going to have to like haul bags and bags and bags of soil to create your raised bed, maybe it isn't the most economical or convenient way to go. And I agree. I think having living creatures, fish, and then you get to have some benefit because it's all also offering you a food source.
Mhm.
I think it's just a really great environment and a great way to always be connected to nature and to your food. And because most of us are very disconnected, we don't know where food comes. I was just having a conversation with a woman here about how so many kids don't know where water comes from. They think it comes from the refrigerator or the tap or from a bottle, right? They're so
Mhm.
disconnected from the source. Oh, if the water's shut off in their building, well, they'll just go to the store and buy some bottles of water. That they think that that's just how simple it is.
Mhm.
And that education piece of truly understanding where these things come from and why it's important to know it, why it's important to be part of it, why you want to have a vested interest in it, because you're ultimately going to be putting it in your body or maybe your children's body. And we know
Mhm.
what that might or might not do. But also, I know for so many parents, and certainly for me, and even still for adults, they don't like vegetables. I don't like vegetables. Well, there's a good chance that you've never had actually eaten them. Right? Or you've eaten them one way, or like me,
Mhm.
you had to do all the work and then you just didn't want to eat them. So you already decided you didn't like them. And when
Mhm.
you can be an active player in start to finish of it, there's a good chance you're going to be more willing to try it and be open-minded, and hopefully then that'll be even something that allows you to introduce and incorporate other things. So if you were going to give somebody advice, maybe they have kids and they're having a hard time to get them eating vegetables. Do you think introducing something like aquaponics or hydroponics, getting them involved that way and kind of being part of the whole start to finish production of it. Is that something? And if so, what are maybe like the 3 foods that you would suggest that are super easy? Most people will like if you prepare it a certain way and you can see that tangible result relatively quickly.
Okay, so let me come back to that last question in a second. Let me tell you a story. So the first school I taught at, where I taught agriculture, where we actually part of the class was growing. I had sophomores, and the first week of school, I was still getting to know my students. I'm like, okay, guys, first week of school, we're going to go out. We're going to go plant carrots in the raised garden bed, and we're going to watch them grow up through the year, and they'll be ready to harvest right around Thanksgiving, maybe the week after Thanksgiving. We'll try to get them out beforehand so you can take them home for your family Thanksgiving. I had two boys who the the path to the garden beds was concrete, and it stopped like 8 feet from where the garden beds were. And I had two boys who would not step off the concrete because they were going to get their white tennis shoes dirty, and they might actually crease them, which I'm not a sneaker person, but apparently that's really bad. So they would, I threatened them with grades. I threatened them with detention. They're like, no, fine. We'll take whatever you give us. We're not stepping in the dirt. So fast forward to the week before Thanksgiving, and these two boys volunteer to go out to the garden bed to thin the carrots. And I'm like, okay, cool. You're finally stepping up. You're finally doing some stuff, and you're willing to get your shoes dirty. Well, I send them out because I had to finish up something in the classroom, and I walk out the door like 5 minutes later, and these two boys are rolling on the ground, brawling with each other, because once I broke them up and I figured out the story, apparently the first one had started thinning the carrots and just started eating them after brushing them off on his pants. And he didn't share with the other one. And so they were fighting because the first boy was eating all of the carrots. And it kids don't like vegetables because of a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's everything that you said. It's they are disconnected. It's they've only seen it one way, or because they think they don't like them. My son, my 15-year-old son now, and he hates it when I tell the story. He, if you ask him if he likes onions, he will say, no, I hate onions. But when I cook onions and put them in literally everything he's eaten since he was 2 years old, he loves them. But if you ask him if he likes onions, he'll say no. And so it's that disconnect of, well, I think of an onion as this, but when I eat it, it's like this. And so the more you can connect those two things together, the less problems you're going to have with your kids. The other thing is just don't give them an option. Don't fight them and make it a power struggle, but just, okay, here's dinner. Try it. Just try it. And it works. Now, as far as the three best crops to grow to get kids to give some of that buy-in, number one, I would say carrots, because carrots are an obvious food. And once you pull them out of the ground, they look like what you buy in the store, and they look like what you pull out of that little that carrot bag. So it's a real easy transition to this is grown and this is something I eat. Tomatoes are another good one to grow the super sweet cherry tomatoes, and then just to go out to the vine and with your kids and pick one off the vine and just pop it in your mouth and just eat it. That's always a good one. And then lettuce or other like green vegetables that you can literally just take right off the ground, tear it up and make a salad. And it's anything, I would say it's anything that allows that simple visual translation of I saw this growing in the garden, now I see it on my plate. I mean, with squash or with a lot of the root vegetables and such, you peel it or you slice it and dice it and then cook it or grill it or this or that. And there's a lot of transformation. So, it's the difference between seeing a chicken walking around and, a chicken breast or a drumstick on your plate. One doesn't look like the other, but lettuce looks the same. Carrots look the same. So that connection is formed in a lot of ways, I think, from that minimal transformation.
No, I think that is a great point. And I think also, like with the carrots and tomatoes, the color, right? The bright, vibrant colors, and the lettuces can be all different shades of green, maybe purple,
Mhm.
maybe red as well. So I think color is also very impactful and can ingrain certain things in their minds as
Hmm.
well. I love that. Adam, this has been a great conversation. I love it. I hope it inspires some people to go experiment, test it out, become an urban farmer or a rural farmer, whatever version of a farmer you want to be, or to support your local farmers and go explore your farmers markets. If you have them in the area, maybe, maybe it's not every week, maybe it's once a month, but be intentional
Hmm.
about it because you know how busy weekends can get and oh, I don't have time and we go do other things instead. But it's interesting when you do take the time and you talk to the growers. We were back in Michigan last summer, my family. My sister lives just outside of Lansing, and they have some amazing farmers markets. And we spent a lot of time with the mushroom farmers and literally bought all different kinds lion's mane, the oysters, oh gosh, what were the other ones? Some other fancy dancy looking one, right? And I asked specifically, okay, what should I do with these? What should I do with these? What should I do with these? And so we
Hmm.
we had like the whole weekend was it was a fungus theme. Okay, it just was all of our meals were themed about was some kind of fungus theme because our whole
Hmm.
family likes mushrooms, so that helps. And it was just fun because it's different, right? Versus just the same old mushrooms that we always buy. And it was fun. It was delicious, all the different things that you can do that spark the creativity, but also get you so that you don't get in a food rut. Because when you get bored with your food, you're probably going to start to eat other things that might not be so great for
Hmm.
you. So I think a farmer's market is a beautiful way to experience and experiment with just a little bit. Somebody's knowledgeable who can tell you how to use it, what to do with it, and build that relationship. And then, maybe you will be that repeat customer who enjoys going every week and finding new things. Before we officially sign off, is there anything that we should know that we have not yet covered?
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of growing. If you have an interest in it, or even a chance of an interest in it, try it. I mean, go buy a living basil plant from the grocery store and come home and put it in a pot, put it in your house. Growing something, or at least trying to grow something, is better than just saying, no, I can't do this. And once again, if you're interested at all, go find people that are doing it. Most areas have a farmer's market within a reasonable distance. Most areas, again, also have other groups, other companies that will be an aggregation. There'll be a food hub of sorts where they'll pull the food in from the local farms, and then you can buy everything through that one place. Um, and ask questions, be vocal. If you only can go to a local grocery store, then ask to talk to the produce manager and say, hey, what produce do you have here that's local, that's within 50 miles? Be careful about that. I forget if it's a state level thing or a USDA thing, but at least here in Texas, local is defined as within 250 miles. That's not local.
Right.
My mushroom farm, we sold everything to our local chefs. We were less than 12 miles from our furthest restaurant. 12 or 15 miles. It was crazy how close we were. And, we were local, but talk to people, ask questions. What do you use to grow this? Where does it grow? What process do you use? Tell me about it. Your farmers want to share what they do. They love what they do, and they want to be able to share it with people that are interested in it. So build those relationships, say hi to people. And if you see something on a table at a farmer's market and you don't know what to do with it, ask, hey, that looks really amazing. What the heck do I do with it? How do I cook it? They'll tell you. I guarantee it. So just be adventurous.
I love that. Yeah, I do. To your point about local, I believe it is per the USDA, the grocery store gets to decide what local means. And I've seen where it could be even within a 500-mile radius of the distribution center. So you are exactly right. Do not be bamboozled by marketing words. This is where you, the customer, need to do your due diligence and actually find out what that actually means, because often it doesn't mean anything. So, yes, thank you for bringing that up. We will put all of your contact info if you have. Do you do online workshops or anything like that where if people are interested in really working with you on this stuff?
Right now, I'm not doing any online workshops. I try to be active on Twitter. I've got a few of my system videos and such up on my YouTube channel. But basically, right now, I've just been telling everybody, if you have a question, if you have something specific, or if you just have something general, or even just, do I know anybody in your area that could help you? Just reach out. I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on YouTube. Just reach out and ask a question. I'm happy to respond back and answer in any way I can. So at this point, I just want to help people build those connections in their local communities. So thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your time and your talents and everything. And everybody listening, I hope you got something out of this. I know I have a lot of teachers listening. You know what? Let's educate our kids and let's make them connected to our food. Maybe you're going to do a little classroom experience with them. It's fun for everybody. So perhaps you've inspired a few teachers to get an aquaponic setup going in their classrooms. If you are listening and you do that, I would love to know. So please message us, email me, tell me about it. Adam, thank you again so much for joining. Everybody listening, now you get to go and be a better being.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. Michelle and Sasha hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you enjoyed the content, please help spread their message by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.